And we are live. And you can hear me, probably, but now you can see us. And we are live here at the Microsoft MTC in Malvern, Pennsylvania.
Takeoff, baby.
That's what it's all about. Here we are on December 18th, 2019. We're getting close to that very futuristic year, 2020. I'm Chris Gomez. I've got Andy Schwamm right here, and we've got Rich Ross behind the camera here for the Dev Talk Show. And, 2020, it's been blowing my mind all month because that, even today, is still a year that sounds like it's, to me, maybe I'm dating myself, like that's the future.
I know what you mean. It sounds like futuristic.
It's
like when we were young, the year 2000 was that thing.
2000 was far away, but then
and
it
we were
got
supposed
here.
to have flying cars in the year 2000.
But when 2000 got here, it didn't faze me. 2010 sort of, because I thought about, for some reason, I didn't think about it in 2001, but in 2010 I kept thinking about the movie, the future, and all that. And now I'm feeling that way right now, that next year is a futuristic year. So if you're watching us from 2020 or even watching us live, thank you for joining us. And once again, whether you're on Mixer, Twitch, or YouTube, thanks for being here tonight or watching us on a replay.
So are you making any predictions for 2020, like futuristic? Like, are we gonna get flying cars, or what do you think?
No, I'm pretty confident that we're not gonna get the flying cars.
That's your prediction.
Yeah, that's the lock.
Okay,
that's the one you should take to the bank.
Right,
I think,
bet on that. Yeah.
I think we could probably have a reasonable conversation about whether you'll get the Cybertruck.
Cybertruck,
right? If that's a real deal,
coming out in 2020, but yeah,
right.
Self-driving cars are coming along though.
They're on their way.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Self-parking, right? The Teslas park and they'll come to you like you're in Batman.
Yeah, it self-drives. I mean, it drives itself down the highway. It changes lanes. It takes exits and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But it's
a work in progress, and you gotta make sure you are ready to take control, right?
You always need to be ready to take control. That's right. You can't. People say like, well, I can watch videos now on the main screen, right? Not while you're driving, you can't. Like if the car is in drive, you cannot watch videos. You need to be focused on the road. Yeah.
I'm glad. Maybe
maybe
we might get there. Yeah, maybe 2020. But I'll tell you what you can use in 2020 are features of Azure.
Yeah.
So look at that. That's a pro segue.
Right, that is pro.
And we are going to talk tonight about one of those features. We're going to talk about Azure Functions.
Yep.
Last time, we talked about Azure API Management, and we even built an ASP.NET Web API project, got it hosted up in Azure App Service, and then managed it with Azure API Management. And Rich was here to explain the value add and to say, hey, you know what? Sure, we because I've put APIs up on web servers, in data centers, in the cloud. But what was really great was Rich explaining, with API management, now you get all of those things that all of our APIs need, whether it's rules or authentication or rate limiting, and you don't build any of it.
Right.
Yeah, you just get it. So Azure Functions I think Azure Functions is interesting because I think I've written a couple of them, and it solves several problems that normally you would either have to write a bunch of code to do, or maybe go get some tool to run batch jobs, or you might even write some. Have you ever written the console app that in your career, did you ever sit down and write the console app that once an hour would go do something? No. Just task scheduler. You were like, I was totally into task scheduler from day one.
Of course I did that. Yeah.
Right.
My first, we used to call them services that run on the machine, right?
Right.
But they were just console apps. You had to start. You auto-started them or somehow. I forget.
You did something.
Yeah, of course we did. I probably did that last year sometime.
Right.
I'm not too proud.
Right.
No, we try to avoid that, but tons of those things.
Sure,
tons of those
little things that did something, or what's kind of nice is in the modern world, there's a lot of these different triggers, and you just kind of wish that when something happens or when this gets called, can you just run a little piece of code? And so instead of building that web project, setting up the web server, getting DNS, all that stuff sorted out, we can just write a function, and away we go. And so some interesting things about Azure Functions is it's not just .NET,
Right.
right? I don't know. You've said you've written a couple.
I forgot about that, quite frankly, because I live in honestly in like the sort of the .NET world,
Okay.
right? But I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can write them in what, like
there's
JavaScript
several. I
and
might not get them
Java,
all.
right?
JavaScript, Java, Python. There's a PowerShell, a C#. That might be it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Rich is nodding his head.
Yeah.
That's usually a good sign. Yeah.
Well, so I wrote the very first Azure function I ever wrote was I actually used like the JavaScript Nodejs sort of support, and I may be wrong to call it Nodejs. I'm not sure, but the reason why I made that choice is because what I wanted to do was every 10 minutes I wanted to ping some API, get the stats back from it, and put it in a MongoDB. And it just turned out that there were about 20 billion examples of working with MongoDB from Node and JavaScript.
Right.
And I said, well, that looks easy.
Sure.
So why don't I just do it in JavaScript, since the example's here and it looks easy, and since I need to translate a time, I'll grab a JavaScript time library, and then next thing I knew, every 10 minutes it was putting this data into a database, and then I could build like a website that maybe gave you reports off of it, stuff like that. But what I needed was that cyclical. Can you just go grab this data every 10 minutes?
Right.
So
functions are pretty cool.
Yeah.
My first sort of production function, I guess, is something I have where it hooks up to Azure DevOps, and we using it to trigger off of what do they call it? Not a service connection, but in Azure DevOps, I'll look and check. I guess I should have been prepared before I started talking. But when we create certain kind of work items,
right,
we have these triggers that happen, and I have one that when certain work items change, it sends a custom email notification. Right. The function was super easy to write, and it even hooks into, in my case, I believe it's SendGrid that we use.
Okay.
And we can get into that when we look at functions a little bit, but they sort of have these automatic ties into other services like that, and I forget what it's called, but you sort of set the output of the function, and it just like fires off this message for me. Like I don't even have to configure stuff.
And it was Azure DevOps that's doing that.
Azure DevOps triggers it,
right?
Calls my Azure function,
and then now you get to do what you want.
And now you get to do what you want.
And I think in some environments, some places those might be called webhooks.
Webhooks is the word.
And I don't know if that's a universal term.
DevOps, it's a webhook. That's exactly right.
It might
you
be
always have a better memory. I'm always like, what's that word?
I know on GitHub, I think they call them webhooks.
Yep.
And in fact, Azure App Service, no, those are web jobs. But I feel like my memory is telling me that you could like create your own webhooks that people could hook into. Like Brady Gaster, I think, was really into that. So he'll probably hear that shout out. And
so
I think that's
before we
cool.
dive too far into this,
yeah,
I want to just throw out a topic that I want to remember to weave this in here.
Okay.
So actually this is the conversation we're having at work this week, which is really kind of funny because we weren't really that prepared for the show. Like this is sort of a last minute, and you were talking about it. You wanted to do Azure Functions.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you yet, but at work we're trying to figure out if we're building APIs. What do you think about the API being an Azure function versus being an Azure web app, say, or like an ASP.NET MVC web API or an Azure function? And there are some pros and cons. I've asked some people some questions about it. I've heard a couple pros and cons, but there's some to me it's an interesting debate, and especially when you bring API management into it, that might even make it interesting too. I don't know.
Well, I think Rich, you probably get that question a lot. Is last time we did build an ASP.NET Web API, which is a fine way to go, I think.
Yeah.
But that there's also no reason that you couldn't have one function. You could just write the functions, and now even the boilerplate of Web API, so to speak, can be removed.
But you have the HTTP trigger anyway,
right,
for a function, right? So even if you don't have API management. A function's a function. You call it. Yeah. It's really not different than what is an API? There's this meaning I think that we have for API that tells us something. Oh, that's a set of methods that I can call.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
usually mean that a set, and I guess in the web context we mean a set of related HTTP methods. I get
Typically,
here and I
yeah.
post here,
Typically,
and
that's what
stuff
we do. Yeah.
happens. And usually we return a status and maybe some JSON.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of that can be accomplished with Azure Functions, and you could choose to host it behind API management, but you don't have to.
When you think about functions, part of that comes down to, well, how are you running them, right? If I'm going to host it in a web API and I'm going to have this in an app service somewhere, you're going to essentially paying for that application always up and running, right? That's the continuous way of doing it. Functions gives you that ability to only have the code run when it gets called.
Right.
Simple way to look at the two different ways of services. It might be the same bit of code under the covers that runs.
Yeah. Actually, it probably will be the same code.
Pretty close to
it's
it.
Just how are we calling it? Now, there's a couple points that I'm curious to hear what you think, and I don't know if we're going too far off. We haven't even seen the Azure function here yet, but one of the reasons I like functions for this is that, again, I forget the word because I always forget the words, but functions have built-in, not called an API key. What's it called? It's like a token that you use to call the function.
Yeah, the security token.
Security token. Yeah. So, boom, access token covered. I don't have to write that, right? And if I'm building an API, I need to build some mechanism, unless I'm using API management, I believe, but I have to build some mechanism for securing my function. Who's allowed to call me?
Yeah, right. Because natively, you don't get that when you say, "Hey, find new web API."
Web API, right. But Azure Functions, you get that.
Sure.
In the portal, right? The portal allows you to configure those things, and I thought that's a compelling.
Sure.
However, other people say, well, functions are good, but they also have a cold start.
There is that
on functions.
Yeah. So it depends on what the function does, right? If that function is kind of running behind the scenes and I don't need to have it as quickly interactive, it's okay if it runs, or gets, compiled when it needs to run because it's not part of the critical. But if it is, then you can essentially put those functions in that continuous model and make them always available because they're like an app service, then they would always be up and running, but that changed your pay model.
But you're right. So then I'm losing the benefit of not paying when it's down, right?
Yes.
But go ahead.
There is a tier up from that too. There's also Premier Functions.
Premier Functions, I think it's
which
called,
gives you, their ability to be up and running and start running the meter is much quicker than the normal set of functions.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know about that, and from my perspective, I'd have to look at pricing and stuff like that. But it's interesting that there's definitely there's a difference between the two, and there's pros and cons.
And it comes down to where they fit in your architecture, right? Right. Having that discussion.
I think part of it is deciding, there isn't a one size fits all solution, and you got to try it out and see is the latency good enough for you, because it might be in a lot of scenarios, and if it isn't, then one of the things that we can get into later, I think, is that Azure Functions has it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, Azure Functions, you write your code and now it's function as a service, but it turns out you actually have a little bit more control than that. And as you were just saying, Rich, is sure, you can go with just consumption model and we'll fire the thing up when it's ready, but we also have these other models where it's always hot.
Right.
And so it sort of blurs the line a little bit, because we always talk about I don't have to think about it, but and you can live that way if you want. Right. But what's kind of nice about Azure Functions, it says, okay, if you need that control, we have that for you too.
So I'll just tell you, I want to end this part of the conversation because I know you want to look at it. Yeah. So the thing we came up with is, it doesn't matter. We're building our API. Okay. The API, right? The code is all going to be. I can drop that code. The whatever I build, whether it's a web API or whether I build an Azure function, that block of code is just going to call my DLL or something like that. It's just going to call my code. Yeah. Now, Azure Functions, it gets a little trickier, I guess.
Yeah. When you say it doesn't matter, what do you mean by that? Because I think you're right. I think you're in concept. I can take that code, and that code I can drop it in a web API. I can drop it in a function pretty much.
Right. So we can make the decision later.
We can make the decision later, but we can make the right decision for that functionality in the application.
Right? Yes.
If it can run a little more delayed, then maybe I can do it.
That's what I mean. It doesn't matter. So what I was getting back at is something I like this quote. I probably won't get it right, but Jeff Bezos says, don't worry about decisions that are easily fixable.
Sure.
If I write it correctly, I can change it from a function to an app later. I can. That's an easy enough change to make, and that's sort of what we landed on. Is like, well, we'd like to figure out which is better, but we don't need to decide that today.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
I tried Googling for that quote. And I didn't find it.
There's a name for it. I'll look for it.
But it might be. I think it said something about minimizing a regret, minimizing decision regret, maybe. So that's interesting. I'd never heard that philosophy before, but I'm interested in understanding it more.
Yeah, he said it basically. If you can focus on decisions that are hard to change. I think it was Bezos. I could be wrong, but I thought it was Bezos. Well, what do I know? Anyway, I'll look while you talk.
All right. So, creating our first function, is that something you want to bring up in Visual Studio?
Oh yeah. You want me to? Sure, I can do that.
So you don't. So here's the key here is I think maybe we'll try doing a few things. We'll see how this goes. Is we're going to start in Visual Studio, and there's a quick start that you can follow along with, but you don't have to use Visual Studio. You don't have to use Visual Studio Code. You can use your favorite editor, so that includes things like Writer. That even includes things like Notepad. It even includes things like nothing, because you could go to the portal and type your code in there. Now, we could all probably have a whole show on like what you should and shouldn't do, but the fact remains is don't feel locked out if you say, well, I'm not a Visual Studio user, because I thought this was an interesting topic because you mentioned Python and I don't have Visual Studio. That's fine. Right. Not a problem.
It's really not a problem.
But let's try this path first, because what I actually think is interesting about it is I think it's a path that's often less taken. So most times when I see Azure Function demos, they'll either, well, let's just write some code in the portal, or let's do some in Visual Studio Code. So this is a little bit of a detour to show that as a Visual Studio IDE users, there's a complete development environment waiting for you if you just create a function app project. So apparently, if we say file new project.
Yeah, so I'm going to go to Visual Studio now. We can get into repos. Well, let's consider this throwaway code for now.
Yeah, right.
Like
that, throwaway code. We don't have to worry about it.
Create new project.
And so let's get you up on screen.
And,
on Andy.
I'm on, yeah, my machine's got like an M50, some kind of weird name, 505 or something like that in there.
Yeah, we got to name these machines a little better. Rich is back there trying to figure out. It's basically like he's trying to decide between like desktop one,
not me,
and desktop two.
That's not me. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, that's
me.
That's you.
He's on Visual Studio.
I'm on that create new project window. Full screen. It's like.
Oh, wait a minute. I probably don't have you listed. Oh, wait a minute.
You should.
Nope,
you might have to close that little drop down and like open it again, and then like the new things show up. I noticed that that's the way it works when it was on my machine.
Tell me your name again.
I don't know. It's like M505, something like there's 5 in it. I don't know my machine. I don't know how that happened, but somehow I never like gave this computer a good name. Now, can you change the name?
Can you say system?
Yeah, I guess I can do that. System information. Okay. The computer name is M04. Oh, it's desktop.
Desktop
That's
dash
what
M04.
It is. Desktop dash M04. I thought it was a 5. I told you my memory is, when you get to my age, you can't expect.
And unfortunately, I've left mine as the default too. So we got 2 of these desktop dash machines running around.
Desktop.
Here we go.
Do you see it? We'll spend like 10 minutes. Like, all right.
How's that?
Yeah. So now that's it. That's it over there. Yep.
Yeah. We'll just change the show to why you should always change your computer name.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
So anyways, all right, here we go.
So, all right, this is my, all right.
And we're probably gonna have to search for the template. Although I actually do think I see it down there. But you can
but I
just
like to just go to like
the
this
Azure
is so
Functions,
easy, right? Because it takes all the noise out, right?
Right.
And you can also even do this where you can say, I want to know like what things are available in C#. I found that they've really this experience has really gotten to be pretty good
compared to the old days of the tree view, essentially.
Right. But in the meantime, we're gonna do.
I do feel like you sort of have to know what you're looking for, but maybe that was always the case because the product just does so much.
Well, there's a lot in here, right?
Yeah.
But this is what we want.
And you don't even have every workload installed. Like
I do not. I do not have every workload.
So anyways, Azure Function, that's perfect. Yep. See that we have a template to create an Azure Function project. And I think it'd be interesting to take a look at what Visual Studio does for you.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say, same thing. Let's call this TDTS function app, something like that, okay? just so I kind of know what it is. We remember, and I'll create it. All right. So right off the bat, you're getting like questions, which are good questions to ask, right?
And so what's interesting is that something's got to make an Azure function go. And your brain can even start working just looking at these triggers.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, Azure has queues. Well, if somebody wrote a message to a queue or maybe some kind of description of work to be done, well, wouldn't it be nice instead of having to write code that like is watching the queue, that code's done. They've done it for you in Azure, and you would just build an Azure function.
Well, here's a timer trigger. There's your console app that runs every hour that does some sort of thing. That's what you were talking about earlier, right? You know,
there's timer trigger. There's some other ones that queue off of other Azure services like Service Bus or IoT Hub or Cosmos DB. Right. That's an interesting one. So I'm guessing here, Cosmos DB, I guess if something
whenever a document changes in a document collection. Boom, there you go. And I think this demonstrates it. I could be wrong. Is that we could probably change the trigger for a function once we build it, but I don't think you can have more than one trigger. Like this function is just going to be for the thing we choose. We could probably fix it later,
right,
and change it, but you can't say I want this to be a Cosmos DB trigger and an HTTP trigger. I don't think.
Right, because what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Right.
When do I get one? Am I waiting for the other? If I get one of them, am I okay?
Yeah, sure. Right.
Right.
Okay. So let's do an HTTP trigger because I think in terms of a quick demonstration, we could always open it up in a browser.
Yeah, by the way, like think about stuff like IoT Hub trigger. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, we want HTTP trigger is the kind of standard stuff. And so let's create this.
This goes to your point of could you build a web API with Azure Functions, and HTTP triggers are your way to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Oh look, I forgot. I started there's an update, and I guess I started doing that earlier.
Oh, interesting.
I'm a slight version behind, I think. I don't know what
I think
I'm
I
on.
am too.
Anyway, right, look at all this.
So what did we get? We got...
Yeah, look at all this. Now, how's my screen font size? Seems okay, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think the code looks good.
Okay.
It looks like all you really got was a function 1 CS.
Yep.
And then we did get, and this goes to your point of changing things later, I think if we look through those JSON files, we see exactly what you're talking about.
Let's take a look at them. So host.json has a lot of information in it.
Yeah. That means version 2 of Azure Functions, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not version 2 of my function.
Right. Because when you get into the PaaS business, I guess this is a wonderful problem that Microsoft has. If you can't just yank the covers out from people who have spent a year or two or more relying on version 1 or 1.1 or 1.2. So that means we got to have a way to say which that we want the newest stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take it 2.0 is the newest.
And then under local settings.json, you can see that
this doesn't look to me like something. This looks to me like something that's only related to working in Visual Studio. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just because this is local settings, right? When we deploy, we would have a different settings file.
Yes.
And so for a web job storage, I guess you have to have a storage account, and it's going to sort of cheat.
The emulator.
Think it's what it's going to do, right?
The local emulator.
Yep.
Yeah. So that host JSON you were looking at, that is, so when you create a function, or in this case, really a function app.
Right.
So you've got a collection of functions inside of that. Host JSON relates to all of the functions that exist inside of the app. So it's kind of some global configuration settings, if you will, for your function app.
Okay. So we don't have a whole lot right here, by the way.
No, out of the box,
which is fine.
Yeah.
It actually makes me feel a little more comfortable that I don't have to have all this stuff wired up for it to just work.
Right.
Because if you remember back to some early days of ASP.NET and you get this monster web config and you just kind of your eyes glazed over and said, well, I'm sure that's important, but we'll find out in production.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in that stuff, right? There are some dependencies here. Well, I don't know if it gave us any by default. Let's see what we got here. We have a Microsoft.NET SDK functions package. But
So what version of .NET Core was that it brought up? I just saw it real quick. 2.1. Okay, which is it's good because it's LTS. I think that sooner or later we'll see 3.1 get in here. There's a little bit of lead time that's always happened because you figure there's probably no other way to do it. Is the 3.1 was released to the world and now this team has to integrate it, so it's not it's not going to be the next day.
It didn't ask me at the beginning like which
yeah.
Now, do we get the properties here? I don't recall like what kind of choices we can make over here, but we do have the option. I wonder to upgrade to 3.0 if we wanted to. I don't know if I want to mess with that right now, but it has some of the other things that we're used to seeing in it. It's a project, but if we look here,
okay, we'll get an answer on that in a little bit because it turns out that there is some documentation on what's supported where.
Oh yeah.
So and we could look at it now if you wanted. And I don't know if my screen's available. It may or may not.
We got to figure out what the name of your computer is.
Yeah, then we're in big trouble. But yeah, Rich has got it.
Yeah, that's it.
So Chris's I had.
We're doing. I take it that host.json's telling us we're doing 2.0 runtime, which means we could use .NET 2.2. Probably makes sense that you'd really want 2.1 because 2.2 is, by the time anybody watches this show is end of life. December. I want to say. Well, do I win anything if I get the date right? I want to say it's December 23rd. Don't ask me how I know stuff like that, or at least think I know stuff like that. Okay. So there's a runtime version 3.x that's available, GA, ready to go, and it uses .NET Core 3.1. So even faster than I thought, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
But
a 3.
But the wizard gave us this. Makes me wonder what would happen if we updated our Visual Studios.
Well,
but it doesn't matter. Right. We're not. The point of this is let's just let's just get it working. But for those of you watching, saying what can I use? Even at the time of this show, you can use .NET Core 3.1. And if for some reason you still need framework, it's available in the 1.x runtime. I don't know if there's been.
Yeah, how about that?
They do say that version 1x is in maintenance mode, so they're like, that's all you're going to get.
Was that your machine? Something just made a noise. I've never heard that noise in my life. So
no, that was new.
Yeah, what was that? Was someone's stomach growling?
It was just the malware.
Yeah, right. We're infecting the network. Was it a phone? It wasn't. I don't know.
It wasn't my phone. No.
I don't know what that was. That was an interesting sound effect. Are we still streaming?
Oh, is that thing maybe saying it's low on battery or
something just dropped? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Low on battery.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, keep going.
What has batteries?
I think, the camera has a battery in it. And I disconnect. Remember we moved the cameras around?
There it is. There's that sound again. I wonder if that's going out over to the thing.
I'm hungry.
No, it's not plugged in. Is that what you're saying? It's still on battery?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let's head back. Let's head back to Visual Studio.
Right. So switch over to me, please, and then you can.
I can fix the camera.
Yeah. Just don't step in front of.
Yeah.
Oh, our camera is the one. I thought it was that camera. Right. So don't. Oh, we're not showing the camera. Okay. Yeah. All right. So anyway.
All right, so there really isn't a whole lot to do here because I don't know that we have a specific.
We don't even have a goal.
We don't have a specific goal. So
we could run this, but let's talk about what we think it does first, right? Sure. I think we should sort of try to dive into this a little bit. So we've got a class called function 1.
Yep.
And then we have the function name is function 1, which is a little I found that always a little strange. Like we need both of those things. And I believe that's probably because functions can be, we talked about functions to be Java, JavaScript, and stuff like that. So I guess they can't make the assumption that the class is the function, right? So it's an attribute, right?
Yeah,
I assume that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, maybe what that does in a way is it does separate the function name that we're going to eventually see in the Azure portal,
right,
from what you called. I think you have to support. You probably want a task of action result, but I guess it isn't. You're basically saying here it is. Here's the method.
Yeah. So here's the trigger defined, right? So and we're allowing gets and posts as what we're guessing from this. I've dabbled with these things, but I don't know everything about it.
And what's nice is you get the request.
You get the request,
so you can examine the request for more information if there's something important in there, which I think we're going to see that they do in this one. So they're demonstrating that.
Yep. And there's some log built in. So the logger is being passed in to the run, right? So this is sort of like, it's not dependency injection, but it's different. But it can be, it's helpful.
Well, now Azure Functions injects that log.
Right.
I believe. Rich.
But there's other things you can put into here.
So as part of the run method, you're getting an iLogger. So when you log, this isn't your log. This is
the log in Azure Functions. So when you go and look at the run, you can see the almost like the console write line.
Right. So just to differentiate it from the iLogger you see in ASP.NET Core, which you can inject that logger and you can pick from some open source libraries, or you can use the built-in one, and then you can configure it to write to files or write to databases or whatever. This is Azure Functions log.
Right.
So first thing they do is basically say, hey, we got one.
Yeah. And then we don't do a whole lot else, right?
No, but they do interrogate the request to say, hey, does the query have a parameter called name?
We can put a breakpoint in here, and you were talking about running this thing. I think.
Yeah, and then when you run it, what's kind of nice is that if you are in Visual Studio, if you build and run this thing,
right,
you get to develop on this locally in an emulated environment that says, I'm going to go ahead and use your storage emulator.
And you can see it right there, starting the storage emulator.
Popping up.
Yep.
I'm going to use the storage emulator, and I'm going to emulate as if this was up in Azure. So you haven't even touched Azure yet.
Right. This is a good example of like where the tooling has come a long way, and these things. Like you could imagine a time when you wanted to do something like this. Well, it's an Azure function. How could you run it locally? I can't run Azure on my machine, but yet we can get pretty far with it. I don't remember. I don't think it's as slow on second starts. I guess because it's firing up.
We fired up that storage emulator. Yeah.
Okay. So
it is expected that you may need to enable a firewall exception, because what you're doing is you're basically letting, is it devenv, or you're letting func.exe, which is the functions emulator.
Right.
You're letting that handle HTTP requests, which you just got to give it permission to do, because if we let any piece of software did that, then some malware could come in and start handling.
And I believe this is the log that Rich was talking about earlier. So now I can see what's going on. Host lock, I don't know, release acquired, that's fine. And so we need to call this right now. In order to call it, I guess I can just go to a browser. Yeah. I mean, I would probably want to do Postman or something like that, but it's a GET. So I can probably just copy this URL.
Yep. Right.
I guess, like I said, it's been a while since I've done one of these. But
because it's running a little server right now on that port locally.
Look at that.
And we're stepped right into Visual Studio, which is awesome.
So simple.
So that log should already, as long as that processes synchronously.
Yes.
Which it did. So we got the trigger function process request. We're sitting on, we're asking whether there was a query parameter called name. This is gonna come up no. Like once you pass this
because I didn't give it
which is okay.
Anything, right? But we can do that next, right? So, but we can also see like what else is on this is also count. This is just basically some keys. There's not a whole lot on the request, but it's enough.
Yeah, it's the HTTP request, and so then this particular function even goes ahead and reads out the body,
right?
Which is fine.
And the rest body is blank.
Yep,
because we didn't send anything.
Yep.
And then it's gonna take the data and look for the name, which we don't have.
If it exists.
Yeah, if it exists, which we don't have.
And then there's a little bit of code there to make sure it's like, well, if it's not null, then we're gonna do some stuff, but none of that's gonna happen.
Well,
except for the new bad request object result part.
Please pass name on the query string or in the request body. And it's fine because we didn't really prepare for that too much. And there we go. So I guess the obvious thing to do is to say name
give it a name.
The dev talk show. Right?
Sure.
And we'll hit it again. And now got the dev talk show. And we still don't have a body of a request. But that's okay. But name is not null. I mean, name is not null because we're setting name in either one of these places. Right? And what does it do? It just basically says, hello, the dev talk show.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
What's interesting is that code takes a little detour there, I think, and says, okay, let's say you didn't use the query string,
Right.
but you passed in some JSON with a name parameter. We'll take that too.
Yeah, that's all it's really showing
cool.
you. It's kind of it.
They're trying to show you your possibilities.
Yeah, that's right. It's a simple example where they're showing two options that doesn't have to be query string.
Read the
guess
body
if you were doing a post, first of all, it supports posts and things like that.
Yep, read the body in, take something off the query string, return action results, which is kind of like, if you're familiar with ASP.NET MVC, you're already kind of used to that. And that's returning the good or the bad status codes for you. That's all happening for you. So if we were to have examined that bad request object, besides seeing the message, I bet you it would have been like a 400.
Right.
So
also, one thing we didn't say right off the bat, we talked about this thing, async.
Oh yeah, they went async first class, right?
First class.
Which we're at the point now where we should be using async for everything IO bound, right?
I think so.
I think we're past the transition. It's only been almost 10 years, I think. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
Whenever C#6 was, I think.
I was working on a demo app today for some stuff at work, and I was thinking to myself, a lot of times when I do stuff, I build methods that'll have like the get user and the get user async, right? And I started to think like, it's maybe time to just stop with the get user, right? Like, why not just everything async? Because everything I do, I always use the async stuff anyway.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do it.
And it's hard not to, because so many of the methods, if they're going to be something that cause you to wait for something, they're going to force you down that path anyway.
I think especially in the .NET Core timeframe.
Yep.
And that stuff. So
Hey, Rich, you're not showing us in the little bottom part. I always like when we do that.
Do you want to do that? I'm sorry.
Like that. I don't know why.
I haven't been behind here for at least a month, so I'm a little out of practice.
And then
it was Chris.
Right. That's right. When I was back there, I screwed up the whole start of the show. I hit the stop button right as we got started. And that's why Rich is back there now, as you can see how well
he's like,
worked.
I got to take this back.
Yeah. So this is, this is the basics. This is a function, right? Now, it might be interesting to do another one of those no-nos and right-click publish.
And publish from here.
You knew I was going to say that, right? Yeah. Just so we could see it running in Azure.
Yeah. I agree.
So if I do that, I believe I can right-click publish. Now I don't have a place to publish it to, but it's okay.
Sorry.
What's that? I thought someone said Azure Function Consumption Plan. That's great because it's not going to cost me anything. I'm going to create a new consumption plan, right?
Hang on. Who are we looking at?
Right now we're looking at you,
screen.
I think.
Oh yeah, you're not. That's not my screen.
Hold on.
I'll back up a sec. I'm with a 4. Well, I thought it was a 5. My screen.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change the names of the machines.
Yeah, that is not me.
That's not me either. I'm sorry. That was me.
Oh my gosh.
He's in Visual Studio.
I'm in Visual Studio.
You're in Visual Studio.
Oh yeah,
There we go.
that's me. Yeah. Well, that was fun. You want me to switch and I'll go back there and control things?
I could probably write code better right now than I could do this.
Fun, but now I know what it's like to sit back there. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Back there. So just to be clear, I said let's right click and publish. Now, I feel like we need a graphic. We need like special effects for certain things we do. There should be something that says like, do not try this at home. Do not right click publish. Friends don't let friends right click publish. We can make shirts about that. But this is demoware, right? This is okay to do right now.
Right.
And as long as you say that it's not cool to do, you're allowed to do it.
You shouldn't do this.
Didn't we say that last time as well?
We said it many times. We say it on every show. So I got to here, and I'm going to say publish, and I want to create a new consumption plan in my Azure sub, and I'm going to create the profile. And now it's probably going to ask me to log into Azure, or it has me logged into Azure already. So here's the name. That's quite a name it creates.
Well, it wants to make sure it's unique.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on a limb here. Now, on my stream today, I did the same thing, guys. I like to have best practices, even though we're right-clicking publishing. I like to say, I'm going to call this the TDTS, what I call it, function app. but I'm going to say dash, and it's a func, right? And it's in our dev environment, right? And I'm really trying to get used to this naming convention, but this way, when it's in my portal and I have all these resources in here, I know what it is. Because if I just went with some of these default names, I can't tell. This is not a production function, so I'm calling it dev in this case. I have some other. Now, of course, it's going to the wrong subscription, so let's go here. It's going to, that's interesting. Let's give it a new resource group. And I'm going to call it the TDTS function app.
So when you're just trying things out in Azure, as you're filling this out, do you think you always create a new resource group for the group of things that you're trying together all at once?
Look at this, by the way. North Europe comes up by default. That seems odd. No offense to the people in Northern Europe, but usually I get like Central US.
Because we're here in East US.
I'm just kind of surprised by that.
Because I do that, as I'll say, if I'm working on something this afternoon, I'll make a resource group, I'll put everything in there, because then all I got to do to get rid of it is delete the resource group.
I'm a fan of resource groups.
Yeah.
And like you said, for delete purposes, it was explained to me, possibly by Rich, I don't know who explained this to me, that I try to think of it as a deployment, right? So everything that's going to go at that one shot, if it can, I put it in one resource group. Sometimes it can't for various reasons, I guess. But I try to put things in a resource group, then I can tear it down, I can build it up and things like that.
That wasn't the metaphor that I explained to people one time. And this was a few years ago, as I was trying to, somebody asked, what's the difference between like an app service and a resource group? And I said, okay, well, and this was before app service had Linux.
Okay.
And so this was, in fact, they might have even still been called web apps. And I'd said, oh, well, an app service plan, in a way, I like to think of it like it's your virtual IIS server. I know you can have
service plan,
I know you could have 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever, but just imagine it's an IIS box. And then you put that IIS box along with other things like its virtual switch and whatever, you put those in a data center. That's your resource group. And it's all housed in there. And then when you don't need that resource group anymore, you just set fire to the data center. And people thought that was kind of funny. I said, now don't do that, right? That's probably some form of fraud. But in this case, I just burned down the resource group, and then I go, okay, at least I don't have to worry about it anymore.
So I have to create a storage account. I can't use my naming convention there because storage accounts, I don't know who invented this idea, that storage accounts can't have good names. Can't put dashes. You're limited to, I think, 26 characters or something weird like that.
You can't have capitals.
Were you in the room for this one, Rich?
I think there's a user voice for that, probably.
There is. Yep.
Say, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a reason that this started back. This is one of the first things, early Azure stuff. It's probably seemed like
Azure
a good
storage
idea
is pretty early.
Yeah, one of the core components that were out there.
But I hate it. I hate that I can't name these things the way I want to name it, but that's okay.
So you do have to have a storage plan as a companion to functions.
Yep, you do. And with that, I'm going to.
Do we get to ask why? I think I know some reasons why.
A little bit of state.
I don't think it's related to that, because before we had durable functions, there were still storage accounts. What I really truly think it is I think that the containers got to get stored somewhere.
Yeah. Your code has to reside somewhere.
It's got to be somewhere on
code
disk.
Is sitting there, right? This is basically it's where the code is going. You said the container.
I use that term loosely.
Okay,
I did. Yeah. I mean, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. That's
what's deploying it really into that storage account, and then at runtime it grabs it.
Right? It gets hydrated to wherever it needs to be.
So let's create this thing. This is going to take a minute, I guess. An error has occurred.
An error has occurred.
Naming.
Whew. Oh wow, that's a good one.
Disallowed by policy. See, I have Azure Policy on my thing.
That you can't create a resource group unless somebody's identified as the owner?
Well, I don't think it's that one. It's probably that I have, it doesn't like the name, but that's weird. It doesn't like the name of something that's automatically getting created for me in here. Now, another way to do this is for us to go over to Azure.
Create the resource.
And create the things. I don't think it's the resource group. So let's go over to Azure. Yeah, this is one of the. So I run into this a lot, by the way. I'm a fan of Azure Policy. We've talked about it on the show before, and I'm trying to follow best practices. But you run into snags like this. Now, of course, we're not supposed to right-click publish, and
another reason you're not
use ARM templates and all this kind of stuff. But it does make it complicated because there are certain things that just don't play well with this. In the meantime, let's create a resource in here. And I want to create a function app. And let's see if I do it from a different direction. Oh wait, let's see if it created. Sometimes it creates the resource group. What did I call it? I called it TDTS. See, it created the resource group, so that part worked. Okay. The function app name. TDTS function app dash func dash
dev, right?
I usually call it, let's try systest. Maybe that was part of the naming thing because I don't usually use dev. And I want the runtime stack to be .NET Core. Central US is fine. Hosting. If it created the storage account. The storage account was called is it gonna give me? It did not create the storage account. So let's go to create new. TDTS. I'm just gonna make this short. Func storage. Okay. We want a consumption plan. Now I do have rules that say I have to put tags on things, and sometimes that's the case. So I'll say the tag is going to be environment. Again, this is hard for demos because I have these rules.
Yeah, but it's interesting though because I guess that leads us to the next level of you're really going to use this now. You would be well served to think about creating some rules for how you're going to live before your deployment gets out of control, organization-wide, right?
Yeah, it's a topic I talk about a lot with people when I say, and I don't want to upset Rich, but we go to demos and Azure looks really easy,
just
right?
Send it off.
Sorry, buddy. But it's not. It's not hard.
No.
But it takes thought. There are questions that you will start to come up with in a production environment, in enterprise, where you're accountable for things and things like tagging and naming conventions and stuff like that, and security. There's so many things that you have to think about.
I don't have a problem with anything you just said. I mean, those are things you need to consider once you get past the quick
That's
demo.
part of why we do this show is to go a little bit beyond the. Sure, we could go watch the Hello World welcome to Azure Functions sample, but now let's think about what we're really going to do with this.
Now, this is one of my favorite things because it says the template deployment failed, and I can turn off Azure Policy if I have to, but please see details for more information. I'm clicking it, and nothing's happening. So there's a bug in the Azure portal, I believe. It's possible we could do one other thing to take a look and find out about this, and I'm going to just in another window do this real quick. I don't know if everyone knows this. Well, everyone in this room might know this, but people watching the stream might not know that if I look at resource groups, because the resource group was created, and I'm hoping I could go into the resource group and look at the deployments and see what went wrong in the deployment.
Oh, that's cool.
And no, see, it didn't ever actually start it.
Okay.
See where it says no deployments, right? But if it had...
Because policy happens before it starts to do anything inside of Azure.
Yeah, but I have seen times when I get... right. As it should.
Yep, absolutely.
But I thought it might still come up in here. So, that's a bummer. So
can you take that resource group and not have the policy be applied to it?
I imagine I can. So let's go into policy and look at assignments. And what do I have? I have see, I was doing some demos on this. I have some initiatives, but I should be able to go into costs and then say exclusions. This is, now we're learning, all right, this is something we can do. We can exclude this TDTS.
And if you can point directly overhead, someone should put the link to when we talked about policies, right?
Where is it going to go?
Straight up.
Yeah.
How high up? Oh, right. I don't know.
Yeah,
we're in
upper right corner.
Okay. So, do you want to keep selected item in the drop-down controls? What the hell does that mean? Yes. Where is the exclusion? Oh, that's okay. Good. So I wonder if I can cheat and copy this and then use it again Oops, come on. So I'm gonna have to do this for a few of these things. Okay, let's save it. I've been burned by this. This is starting to get a little, not make a big deal of it, but it's getting a little annoying because I've been burned by these Azure policies in these kind of scenarios. And I really like Azure Policy. I think it's a really good practice to follow, but it's you know, it's kind of a pain. It gets you into some tricky situations because not everything is exposed in the portal. If I was doing this as an ARM template, I'd be able to get to everything I need to do. I'd be able to see the names of everything. I'd be able to see things. There's little things that happen behind the scenes sometimes that'll create this little resource that you don't know that it needs. At least I don't know that it needs it. Hopefully I'm doing this right because I'm trying to do it quickly while we're talking. All right, so if this is right, I guess I should be able to come over here and try this again. I'm gonna add a function app. See, this doesn't, oh, there it goes. Okay, good. So, function app name is gonna be tdts function app dash func dash this test. Maybe I thought func was the name I used for these things. I don't know. Okay, storage account. I'm giving up. I'm just gonna let it use the name it's supposed to have. And the tag shouldn't matter because I turned off my rules.
Yeah.
So, oh man, see that?
Okay, well, if it still doesn't work, I'm kind of going down the same path. I'm gonna see if I can get deployed here.
Switch to you?
Let's see if I get deployed. I just tried to catch up to you that way.
You're deploying it to your, obviously to your subscription.
Yeah.
So there's something
Which is
in
the
my
Wild West subscription where there's no policy.
But I just disabled those. So it's also possible that one of these things is not going into the it's creating something outside of the resource group.
Shouldn't be. Yeah. And it might be that it takes a little while for the policies to roll through, right? And when we saw that when we did the demo.
Quick. In this, when you change them, I think they take effect. It might not audit everything, but I thought immediately. I mean, you know, I don't know. It's probably something like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty quick, but who knows? I go to previous. I'll hit it again while we're sitting here and see what happens. Oh, no.
Still deploying.
Work. So what's interesting is if I download a template, I might be able to see what's going on in here and what might have been causing the trouble.
So far, I do see that in my screen, I do have the resource group deployed, and it does say that it's in the middle of a deployment, right? That's saying.
So you can click on that.
It's like, yeah, you're doing something.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of cool that you can actually see. I do a lot of things that have like multi-step deployments, and so the deployment stuff is pretty cool, really helpful. It took me a while to find out, like when my release pipelines I do a lot of stuff with ARM templates. And sometimes they run 10 ARM templates, you know, and it was kind of hard to like get a handle on some of that stuff from the Azure DevOps portal. Then I realized, oh, the key is to go over into Azure and look in that resource group at the different deployments that are going on. But yours is, what's it doing? Oh,
it's still working on it.
Yeah.
So this is where we probably needed one out there already.
Well, I probably have one that we, you know, I didn't even think about that. Storage account. Why did this thing fail?
Oh, look at that.
I'm a little ticked off that mine didn't work. I'm wondering why.
Well, it's saying a bunch of stuff. Odd. Publish started. Getting some information out here. I guess it's doing a zip deploy, like it built it here and then zipped it up, maybe.
So you did the right click, you just publish right out of Visual Studio.
And just what I'm reading down here is I kind of feel like what happened is it built it here locally, zipped it up, and then did a zip deploy, and it does say that it succeeded. Oh, deployment is complete. Look at all that.
So, you know, Chris should really do all the hard work.
So what that means is we have a new app service, because I just left the defaults alone. You see I got these wonderful names, but that's okay.
You did call it -RG.
I did. Well, I was trying to. I watched a stream this morning. This guy that I watched advised that you should really name your stuff carefully, but I didn't catch all of it, so I tried. If I go into this app service, is that going to get me to the function? Well, actually, it brought me up the function apps, right? So, in the portal now, let's see what this looks like.
Okay.
Where here's the function one that we created.
Yep.
And I don't.
No, you don't.
Oh, I thought I did. It was blue a second ago. Thank you. Okay, so we can go straight to the URL, and it says that the functions app is running. But
no,
not what I expected, because I have to go to /function1. Is that right?
Yeah. You're at the app. You're not at the function, right?
Okay.
I find, by the way, when we come back to this previous screen in the portal, I find it confusing. I'll talk about it when we go back to that screen. Again, I know that if I tell Rich I find it confusing, that by the end of the week things will be fixed, and you know.
So I'm trying to figure out, how do I call it?
Well, it's called function 1, right?
Okay.
So actually, I think you'll get a better URL if you go into the function themselves. I think you get.
Oh, right here, get function URL.
Where I'm not seeing your mouse. Am I not seeing? Oh, there's your mouse, but I don't see it on my screen. That's weird.
So.
Oh, I'm not even seeing your screen. Am I on the wrong? I use 0DMO.
Well, what's interesting is okay. So this is something I think we can talk about. Is that it's saying here to get a function URL with a key, right? But I chose anonymous. So would I still, if I had chosen a different form of access, then that would get dropped right in here, so that I could come get a URL and it would be like, yeah, here's one with a valid token. I don't know. I did that.
I'm not sure what I missed part of that, but I think you have tokens in there that said the host, the master key and stuff like that.
It said that, but what was interesting is if we go back to the code, there was something that I think we glossed over.
Authorization level anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we glossed over this real quick because I didn't even notice it until I tried building one myself.
Well, you could just go in and change it.
You can change it, but there was a selection to make.
Was there a selection to make? I didn't notice it.
And let's just call it whatever. Who cares? Right here. See this right here? We didn't talk about this authorization level.
No, I didn't notice that. What are your choices?
And there's function, anonymous, and admin. Anonymous means just anyone can hit the API.
Sure.
Yeah.
Function, according to the docs, meant something else.
I believe that's the key, because you go into the keys on the function and you can see those same ones that you had in the drop down there.
Authorization level, they wanted for the demo, they said use anonymous, and they're like, but if you choose the default level of function, then you have to present the function key, which is fine, but I even wanted to, like, let's just not even worry about that.
Right.
So let's back up a little bit. So somebody who maybe got lost as we were following along, here I am in the resource group that contains the published function app service, or the app service. You click in there, it brings up the portal UI of your Azure function app, and it says, yeah, here's the one you created, TDTS function app 2019. And if you kind of see, that's what it's called back in the project. Oh no, it doesn't. I have to go open it, because I tried to make a new project. Yeah. But there it is, TDS function app. That's the guy. That's the code. And I just decided to go ahead and try anonymous, so I wouldn't have to worry about tokens or anything. But here is my function 1 here. That's what we called it.
Yep.
So here it is, and it looks like I can do a lot more, but what was the key was coming up right here to get function URL. and saying, okay, if I click that, copy that, here I am. This is exactly what you saw earlier.
Yeah.
Make it a little bit bigger. But if I go and I add the query name parameter, I'll put my name in, then I get hello, Chris. And that's the same, that's the exact same functionality. But now we're up in the portal. And I'm kind of interested in what you can do with your published function. And so if I go find that function one, I get this function.json, which I think is where I could configure this. I could change it from anonymous back to function. I could change what type from HTTP trigger to something else. I could do that. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that because I uploaded a zip file, it's saying here your app is read-only because you ran from a package file. So I can't edit the code right here.
Right.
Which is okay.
Which is probably a good thing.
Nothing wrong with that. But I could run the function just again. I could just run it right now. And it's kind of meaningless to do that because I didn't apply that query string or anything. But I believe that UI is in here.
Should be a test off to the right there.
Yeah, the problem is I made the browser a little bit bigger.
I don't remember ever seeing this test hub thing.
So here I am here's my function app and here's the function. I've highlighted that.
Yep.
I can't see the code because we published a package, but I can still see the test UI over here. And let's say we're going to do a get.
Is that new?
It's been there for a little while.
So when I wrote my first Azure function, I did it all in the portal, and I was only able to accomplish it because I could test it right there.
Yeah, sure.
It's possible the UI has changed slightly since, but I remember this experience pretty much exactly. So if I go ahead and run this, the output here, please pass a name on the query string or in the request body, and we're seeing all of that logging is coming out down here. Here's the C# HTTP trigger. That was our log from our code.
Yep.
So now let's go back and do this and 400 bad requests like we expected. Let's come back up, put in the parameter.
And you can even do the request body on this one.
Yeah.
You get your option.
Yeah. Well, we'll try that next. Can I?
Name is there. I think it's exclamation. Oh, not a value. What does that mean?
I think I've done something that's
add parameter. Yeah, what's that going on there?
I can't type.
You can't type?
Yeah, it's not taking.
Oh.
Yeah. When I type here, it's not doing anything.
What about putting it down in the body?
I tried that too. Oh. And there you go.
So that's fun.
The portal just disappeared. Okay, let's go find that again. App services and the function app and function one. Okay, and then bring up this test view. Oh, so by the way, there were these tabs sitting here on the right.
Oh, that's yeah.
So I picked test.
So I don't know if I've ever clicked that before. That's interesting. I'm looking at one of my.
And now
here.
It was just who knows. This time we're going to put TDTS so we can see that it's different. Say run, and if I come down to the bottom, the output's correct, status is correct, 200 okay, the log is filled, but we saw that our code also was willing to take the answer from the request body. So I wonder if I come in here and write, will it let me do it, or is it going to fight me again? No. I was hoping I could come in here and write a little bit of a...
Weird that it's not letting you.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Right in there and write a little bit of JSON and pass a name that way. But that's okay.
I don't know.
I'm not going to worry about that.
Is it possible it's because you deployed it the way you deployed it, and just like you can't change the inner stuff, you can't test it?
It could be my browser too, because remember I'm in Firefox, which I know is weird. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh!"
That's what I was wondering what that was.
So I don't know, and I don't want to speculate. I really don't know what it is.
So,
but I can say view files on this tab too, and I can see the function JSON that I can look at, but I can't look at my code. There are some other features here.
Now, let me just get back. This is where I find it confusing. When you look at this left panel you have here.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff broken out, but yet there's also a lot of stuff that goes in the middle, which you're not seeing right now. Like if you go to manage, I think it's manage. No, actually, yeah, this is where you get keys. Sorry. Click on the function itself. You should get, or maybe it's the functions. Where's the part where you get like all these options? Or maybe it's up even a higher level. Like, yeah, okay, right. So here you have this screen, which has function app settings and configuration sort of in the middle. But if you click on platform features at the top, you get a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, you get tons of stuff.
And so there's all this stuff, which is at the, I guess, at the function app level, right? I think this is like consolidated.
Is this app service level? Because just like a web app in an app service, if I want to think of this as web server as a service, what if I want to slap a custom domain on this API? What if I want to enable TLS? What if I want to? What's really nice about this, set up authentication and authorization all right here.
Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff.
Don't write any of that code.
It's just that I find like. Remember, I just had to ask you like 3 different. I can never remember where the heck this stuff is, and there's probably a reason it has to be that way. But on the left, you have the TDS function app. Then you have a list of functions, and then you have each function. Now we only have one. We have function 1 in there, and then each one of those things has keys.
And we're not even looking at proxies and slots.
I don't even know.
Leave that alone.
I'm familiar with that stuff. But under manage is where you can set the keys. And there's a host key and a function key, right? So now we only have one function in here, but I've got an example of my own where I wrote where there's multiple functions in the function app, right? And you can give each function a key, or you can use the host key. You can go up to the parent level and say this key is good at all of them, and that's kind of cool. And I find it convenient that it's set up that way. But I do find some of this stuff like a little weird getting around in here.
Now I believe, is it difficult to add a new function?
Well, I don't know how you do it from here.
Oh, I can't.
Because you're not editing in this mode. You can't edit in here.
Right. You can edit back in your code.
You go back to Visual Studio and you can push it back up.
I could. The reason it says read only is because we chose to publish a package.
It knows that. It gives you right there. It says
it's not changing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's one of the. Yeah. You can do it certainly in the portal, but that's like kick the tires. Hey, wow, we can create a function real quick. Because if you do it that way, we talked about functions. When they get called, they're going to need to get instantiated somewhere. And it takes longer to do that from that mechanism as opposed to packaging it up and then having the package be able to roll wherever it needs to. So there's a hierarchy, if you look through the documentation, of things you can do to help make sure your function goes quicker.
Okay. Plus, if you create it in here, I mean, let's face it, we want source code integration. We want like a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So
we don't.
So the nice thing about a Visual Studio project is that this I can already see that this can go into our source control.
Yeah.
I imagine though that what we're missing is the publish step we would quit doing that in here. We could probably use Azure DevOps.
We can. We can.
When I say probably is like I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, no, I've done this. I mean I have like working examples where I've done that.
You could even deploy, so the CLI allows you to deploy these packages too. So I wonder if there's something I could build in Visual Studio and then let's say I didn't have Azure DevOps going and I wanted to, from the command line, just say, just push this up.
Oh, sure.
It's probably possible.
Yeah.
But, I'm curious I wonder what the, part of me wants to see what the Visual Studio Code experience looks like, but do you want to add another function?
Well, I think it's worth adding another function, but I would like to switch over to see what the tooling is like in VS Code. I think
here's what I wonder.
Yep.
I'm going to try being like the Visual Studio way.
Yeah.
And let's see if there is
I have a feeling,
Let's see if there's an add new Azure function.
Right.
There it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
to the app, you're adding a function.
Okay.
So I don't think this is going to be anything like super exciting either. Let's face it, right? It's going to be function 2. Why not? And it's probably
what do you want it to be?
Sure.
So let's do a timer.
Oh, you're okay.
And I think
differently. Why not?
so. There's an art to learning what the schedule here means, and I believe that you can
Oh
even
my
just
gosh.
go look up cron scheduling.
What the heck is that? Yeah. So do you know what that means?
I think that one is every 5 minutes, but I'm not positive. I learned enough so that I could do the 10-minute thing, but I really did. First I said to myself, "Oh my gosh, what is that thing?" And here's where my lack of Linux education was showing. It's just like, oh, that's just a cron job schedule, and I was like, oh, what is that?
I'm gonna go.
And the Linux guys are like, the Linux guys and gals are like, you don't know?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Like, just write some bash. And they go, okay, I admit I'm learning still. So
cron schedule format. I'm just taking a quick peek in here. On time string.
I think that might be a slight difference too. I don't know, but the slash I think means every.
So 30 * would mean every 30 minutes.
Yeah. So we have 0 */5 ***, which ends up being executed command every 5 minutes. That's the third one on your list there.
Yeah. Well, this one has it. We have */5 every 5 minutes. If you do without, well, it's on my screen here, but this, who cares, right? Does this matter?
No, it doesn't matter that much. Except that I don't want it to be every 5 minutes. I think what I'm going to try doing is
So what's interesting is if you put it in the first position,
try making it every
like in
10
this
seconds.
example on my screen, which people aren't seeing, but 30 is 30 minutes past the hour, which is different than every 5 minutes. So like,
okay.
You're doing it every 5 minutes. You're not doing it at 5 minutes past the hour. If you move it up a slot, it would be 5 minutes past the hour, something like that.
I'm going to try setting this to a /10, and I think that's going to be every 10 seconds. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Now that whole trigger got put into the attribute. Kind of nice.
Yeah. Except that no one can read it, but it's okay. That's what comments are for, right?
I'm curious. See how in the attribute we have my timer? Can I access that? I can. And so I get some interesting value here.
Yeah.
Like, am I late because I'm taking so long?
Yeah, sure.
What is that schedule anyway?
Right. I wonder if you can change the schedule and say, when something happens,
it's
change
only
the
gettable.
schedule.
It's only gettable.
Yeah, okay. Schedule status
is something.
Something. All right, so it's interesting that there's in there format.
That's cool though. Yeah. But it probably is useful to know if you're late. Functions running over time. So the C time. In fact, they did almost exactly what I would have done. Is just say, hey, let's just fire out when it, what executed. Yep. Most likely, a timer function, it doesn't make much sense. This isn't somebody making an HTTP request, so that's totally nonsensical. You're not going to return a status. You're not going to return JSON. You can't even do it anyway because you don't have a request. This is more of, I need on a time for you to go do something. Yeah. It might be read something. It might be write something. It might be both. It might be, who knows? It's business logic done for you in the cloud. It's going to work. It's going to run all the time. So if I let this go in the emulator, and I've done that cron scheduling correctly, then what we should see is we should see a run, and then we should
does
see.
Does it go right off the bat? Is the first question. Like, does it fire off immediately? Now listening, application started. Wait, that's the first thing that has to happen. Okay.
Right, that host lock leaves.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's running.
Right.
So is it going to wait 5 minutes? What did you do? You did it.
I thought I did 10 seconds.
Oh. Well, you might not have.
No, I might not have. Oh, you think so?
It could be 10 months. Let me look and see if I still have this thing up. Execute command every second. Oh God, I don't know. This samples page isn't great. I just went to the first place I could find, and there should be like a place where you can like a calculator.
How do I schedule a cron job that runs every 10 seconds? It comes right up on server fault. Although what's interesting though is that somebody's answer is you can't schedule the job every 10 seconds, but I suppose you could schedule the job to run every minute.
And sleep and loop. Oh, so you'd have to loop within it. So then they don't go to the second. What they're saying is run it every minute and then let this job itself run every 10 seconds within the minute. Yeah, that's weird, but it's a hack, I guess is what that person's saying, but I don't like it. This looks way too complicated.
Hold on.
Here's every 30 seconds.
There was the answer. This will trigger every 60. This will trigger every 30.
Why is it 90 for every 60 seconds? Riddle me that. Do that one? Doesn't.
Interesting.
How can I trigger it? I think he typed it wrong because then he's asking for how to. I don't know. Whatever. Has it?
Well, that's the point. Is understanding this format is pretty important, and clearly we don't.
We don't know
really
what we're talking about,
understand it.
Mostly what we wanted to see is, I guess, this is it. And I honestly, I don't even know if it's worth it, but if you deploy this, we know we're going to get 2 of them in that thing. I'm more interested at this point in the VS Code experience because I think we know what's going to happen when we deploy it.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And we don't know what we're doing with this cron thing anyway.
Right. So VS Code is interesting because I'm not sure if there is a simple VS Code quick start that we could follow quickly.
Oh, I was gonna just open it in VS Code.
Go ahead.
No, I mean I don't have the code.
There is one.
You have the code.
Oh,
right?
I have the code. There's a Python function one with VS Code. Functions with logic apps.
I guess I could open the one I have because it doesn't matter if I can't deploy it. I'm just gonna look at the code.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. It is a JavaScript one, but you could probably follow that and do it as a C# one.
Well, you know why it's probably a JavaScript one is because that way you don't have to download probably anything to get going, since out of the box Visual Studio Code
will run JavaScript. But you have .NET on your machine anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, that's true. They do want you to have the Azure Functions extension for Visual Studio Code. So let's try that. Let's see what that all looks like.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, I just that one I created earlier, I just opened up in VS Code, and yeah, I mean it's like you're talking about the getting started experience, but the bottom line is this is just a class file.
Yep.
So
Am I shifting to you?
yeah, if you want. I mean, while Chris is getting something ready, I don't know if it really matters, but here it is, right? So I'm gonna get the same kind of stuff I expect to get here. It's loading this kind of stuff. Let's see. So I can get log. I get the help I would expect because it's a .NET Core project, right? And it is what it is. It's just writing code. Now there might be some. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, except maybe like a new. If there's some help for like starting a new project. Are you trying to install some?
Yeah, I'm going to install the Azure Functions extension in Visual Studio Code. It took all of like 2 seconds, which is really cool. And then I suspect now that I wouldn't be surprised at all if I can find a.
Switch back to Chris. I'm useless on this thing.
I bet you I can find. I bet you without even looking at any kind of quick start, I will bet that I can go to the command palette and I can say like new. Oh, there it was. I just typed in new. And there near the top is add Azure Functions create new project.
Oh man, every time we
cool.
switch, I lose the ability to see Chris's screen.
I'm going to go ahead and click that. And it's asking me, well, where do I want it? Okay, fine. Let's put it in source and let's make a new folder. And let's call it VS Code AZF. And we'll select that. Select the language for your product.
Oh my!
This is great.
So wait,
who needs Visual Studio?
Man, my screen was stuck and I missed the beginning of it.
Let's try C#. What do you want? Do you want V2? Do you want V3 preview, which is no longer in preview?
Now we know.
Or do you even want .NET Framework? Let's just do 2 again. Select a template, and I did that, and now it's thinking. And then which one of these do you want? It's like we know these are easy to call, so let's do a trigger again. I think in the future we're gonna have to start thinking of some use cases and do some cool stuff with these. Provide a function name, HTTP trigger C# sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And then the namespace company.function, let's call it ddts.function. And then which version do you want?
There it is.
Function anonymous or admin? That walked you through it in a way that we walked over in Visual Studio.
It was almost better here because. Yeah, right, because we walked over it. We skipped things. Here, they're just prompting you one at a time. They're not giving you a fancy like UI for it, but yet they get down to it. And they figured out a way to do all this kind of tooling into VS Code, where I remember in the beginning, VS Code was like, no, it's not about all that stuff. It's about just clean writing code and stuff like that. And I guess they envisioned some different, like, the plugin model for it, but I think it's way beyond what people would have expected, like in the early days of.
Oh, the extension stuff is just blown up. Like I've got live share activating here and all that, and OmniSharp is kicking in right now, and it's getting everything ready.
So this looks like it's pretty much ready to go. Had before, by the be used the same template.
Yeah,
I don't know where that stuff comes from. I don't know, but it did that. So how did you? To be fair, how did you start this again? Because I was having trouble with my screen seeing yours.
I didn't know what the command would be.
Yeah, right.
So if you do, and this is it's different on a Mac, but on PC, Control-Shift-P brings up the command palette, and then you can just start typing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me just do new, and there it was Azure Functions.
Right. I don't have the thing installed, but.
So what it means is that extension added that command, and then the search picked it right up. If I really wanted to, I could like go attach a keybind to it or something. But what I'm going to do is I went ahead and set the breakpoint in our favorite spot here, and let's see what happens. I want to see what happens if I run this with their debugging experience. So I go ahead and click the little bug with the X on its back, which is cool.
You're going to get that whole emulator stuff
attached to .NET Functions.
It seems to know what it does.
Yeah, it does, huh? You must have hold on. But it says install. You must have the Azure Functions core tools. So that sounds like a different extension.
Maybe it's a different extension.
No, what it really is, it's an NPM package that it's going to go get for me. Wow. It says, don't worry, I'll take care of that for you.
I mean, that's what's cool about it, right? Now, where does that go now? So that's not going to be an NPM package in this project, probably.
No, it's installing it globally.
It's going to be globally, right? Which is, you don't want it in this project, because you don't, right? But I'm just thinking about that.
So here's some command line tooling to let you. It's the Azure Function CLI is what it looks like, and now it's building it up. Here it goes, executing task. We just sat here. Restores completed.
You still can't right-click and publish from VS Code, can you? You can publish.
I don't know. I'd be curious. There's some. Let's see. Publish. No.
I'm wondering.
Take a look at the Azure tools at the bottom. That Azure tab.
Oh, yeah. On the left side, you've got an Azure. Well, you got
that thing?
Yeah. I think he's talking about the one over here. That thing. Is that what you were talking about, Rich?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, while we've been sitting here down in the terminal, it's been. Look at this. It put us right back where we were. I mean,
we know what that
it's ready
means,
to go.
Acquired. Yeah,
I don't even have to copy this out. I'm not sure we had to do it in Visual Studio.
I probably didn't have to.
Yeah.
I know.
And we click, and I have to control click. Sorry, it even told me that.
Come on, man.
And then because I didn't do anything, it's just gonna. Well, we did get our breakpoint, which is our proof that it really worked.
Yeah.
So yep, this is real. All in Visual Studio Code, completely free product, right? Visual Studio Community is free too, but lightweight, get started really fast.
I'm trying to do more and more stuff in VS Code.
Hello, really fast. Done. Wow. It's up. It's running. We're good. Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna go uninstall Visual Studio now.
No, but
pretty impressive though, right?
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. So this was a good, sort of getting started functions, just some of the tooling. We didn't get into all the depth of them. There's another feature. I mean, again, we could talk about this another time, but and I don't even know what it's called off the top of my head. I could probably Google it really quick. But let me just try something real quick. Because I was talking earlier. Oh, this is my screen up. Okay, good. So there's these bindings. Now I'm using SendGrid as an example because it's the one I remember. But I think this is going to show us that what you do. So I'm going to look right out here. So see this in the arguments for the run method, you pass in the SendGrid thing. SendGrid attribute is what we're applying to this out parameter, right? We're applying it. There's an out parameter called SendGrid message, okay? And we have this attribute on it, which has our API key for SendGrid, because you can't just call SendGrid, okay? And this is interesting. And then in here, they're creating this email object. It doesn't really matter what it is. This is just an email SendGrid message, okay? But this is synchronous. So this is the end of the Azure function right here. Yeah. That's the Azure function.
Right.
At no point in here do you say send.
Okay.
Okay. This was like freaky to me. Okay. And there's a name for these things. I forget what these are called. I was kind of hoping if I spend a minute to read this thing, it's an output binding. Okay. And it's gonna just send the message.
Yeah, it would be since the purpose of this Azure function is to use SendGrid, it would be redundant for you to actually have to say it, right? Because if you didn't say it, then you didn't do it. So it seems
it's very declared. It's a little weird.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
That
Like
it's
for
weird,
first time you're
especially when the way you're used to writing code.
Right.
What it seems like what they really want you to do is if you just fill out the message, when the function ends, we take it from there.
Right. Now this is the asynchronous version is the one I've actually done now that I think about it because I use this message collector. So again, you don't really know that you're sending the message.
You're just putting it out on.
But you're putting it into this async place.
That way it could even I guess it's probably a queue. But it doesn't matter what it is.
And the message collector, it's all very generic, right? Like you don't know that it's the I'm sending an email message. I just wanted to show this. So there's other
there's so many other bindings.
Where we are, these trigger bindings, and I just knew that there was a SendGrid one out there. But there's different things you can do. Here's one for Twilio. And I don't know what all these other things are.
We did the timer binding. Right?
Those are so these are triggers
and then we also
bindings.
did
Wait,
the
maybe these are, but I want to do an output, so maybe I'm looking in the wrong category. This is
well, I think the ones we played with tonight were listed in that over on the left where it's got the whole list was HTTP and webhooks.
Well,
and also timer. But I see an interesting one. What is that warm up?
Well, so one thing to note, right? This is an output binding. And this category here says triggers and binding. So you don't know which one of these are input and which one of these are output. Now, please, Rich knows something.
So triggers are going to kick off your function, right?
Sure.
As we would know. Bindings can be either used for input of information. So if you've got a trigger that came off of, that document sitting in a Cosmo DB, then you would have to bind
like binding. Okay. By the way, I should always just like shut up and let Rich explain things,
Sometimes. Sometimes you gotta, we're there with you. So bindings can be inputs or outputs, and it's meant to be so that you don't have to tie directly to the service. If you want to swap services out, the binding component is still there. You're just on the back end, you've wired that.
Change the configuration.
Bingo. Yeah.
It's cool. So I don't know.
What is a warm-up binding?
Well, let's see. Click it. Find out.
I don't know what it is. But
Azure Functions warm-up trigger. Warm-up trigger supported only. Oh, I know what this is. For a premium plan, I think you can set it. You want it like trigger to warm up your function, right? It's basically saying like don't use the function, just warm it up.
Well,
it's like pinging.
It looks
probably,
like
right?
you get called. A warm-up trigger is invoked when an instance is added to scale a running function app. So I guess if you have some initialization you need to do, I could be wrong. No?
I'm just curious to see.
I mean, it says a little bit further down, the warm-up trigger lets you define a function that will be run on an instance when it is added to your, and then I'm covering it.
That help?
Yeah. I haven't done any work with the premium stuff, but it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me that they say, look, you could open connections, load dependencies.
Yeah.
Run some custom logic.
Mostly, again, like there's definitely a lot to it, and I don't know how we're doing here, time-wise, right? But I just thought this is an interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? Model or design, where you just.
Now I like that Microsoft, like the ideas start flowing when I look at this Microsoft Graph bindings.
Yeah, graph bindings. I saw that one in there.
So if you were to maybe
look at this OneDrive file. Input binding.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like,
pretty crazy. Service bus, SignalR service. And the SignalR service stuff is fairly new. I could be wrong about that. Where basically now you can theoretically write, well, not theoretically, you can write Azure functions that interact with SignalR hubs. Or maybe host a SignalR hub. I'm not sure. I guess it would be hosting SignalR hub. That's something I definitely want to take a look at, especially in light of how I enjoy playing with SignalR.
Yeah, maybe next show. Do you want to do SignalR? Because I haven't used it in so long.
Yeah, SignalR is great. We did a hands-on lab last time, and I would love to dive into it. Because the hands-on lab we just got started basic stuff. I would love for us to sit around and talk about SignalR. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put that on the list. Next show.
Yeah.
We have oh, by the way, one thing we haven't said in a while, if you're watching, and you're watching on the archive on YouTube, do us a favor and give us that thumbs up or whatever they call it, and like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Comment down below.
We appreciate it. And if you're watching on the live stream, of course, as always, follow us on Mixer or Twitch or wherever you are.
Yeah, we did get a host from Chops tonight, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Chops.
So,
what do we have a schedule for upcoming shows? Because we got a holiday coming up.
So
yeah, we have back-to-back holidays on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays, we're getting crushed on the Wednesday nights.
Yeah. So Christmas in the U.S. is next Wednesday. New Year's is
so we're doing a
Wednesday
show.
After that. I'm up for doing a show.
I'm Jewish,
but
I'll be out getting Chinese food because that's what Jews do on. No, but actually I'll be away. Yeah, but we go to Chinese restaurants. That's what we do.
It's not just a Christmas story you guys do.
No, I've done it many times actually.
Cool. You know, there's a lot more open on Christmas Day now than there used to be.
It really is true.
It's true, unfortunately.
Kind of sad in a way, but you know.
But so it turns out that that I'm hosting Christmas. So
are you really?
Yeah.
A lot of people?
No, it's not a large crowd. It's just it just means that I got to cook, which is fine. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't decided what I'm gonna make yet though. So yeah, either the show probably moves.
Well, I'm not even around.
Or
hey, you're going. You're doing things.
I'm doing stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not around for that week.
Right. So I think probably we don't know, which is okay.
Yeah. So it would most likely be the 8th.
Our audience is generally pretty big on an average night.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it would be like on a holiday week.
Well, no matter what happens, I think you're right. SignalR would be a good next show, and we can dive into that. And
you know what feels weird? I'm usually sitting here saying, and your guys are good at this too. Let's plug Tech Bash. Right? And we're not plugging Tech Bash because Tech Bash
October 2020.
Yeah, well, it's a little, even for me, it's a little soon. Let's
I'm with you.
But it's funny, right? Like we're usually plugging Tech Bash. What else we got to plug?
We got a code camp coming up
tomorrow night.
There is. So Philly.net is doing their meeting tomorrow night. Jeff had to change up the title and what he's going to be talking about.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he's doing something that he did at another user group recently as well. So I think he updated the meetup. I'm just blanking on what it is
right now while you're talking.
Okay. Yeah. So and then that'll be streamed on the Philly.net channels.
Yep.
So Philly Dotnet and
full stack development with ASP.NET Core.
Oh, nice.
3.1.
Yep. So he's going to spend a couple hours talking about that tomorrow night.
I think he did that session at Tech Bash.
Wasn't that the keynote?
No.
Oh, no, that was the other session he did that same day.
And we have it live.
It is
on the Tech Bash site now.
I don't know if it went live. I know it's up there.
And he's going to get 2 hours.
2 hours is great.
So,
2 hours of Jeff Fritz.
Yeah.
Nice.
That means I'm going to ask him a lot of questions.
I don't think I'm going to be. Oh, I will not be here. I am going to see.
You're going to see that tomorrow.
You're on tomorrow night?
Yes.
Nice.
7 o'clock in IMAX.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it tomorrow, but
I'm going because I'm happy to admit I'm second choice. I had friends that were going to go, and some of them were going together, and 2 of them had to bail.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, I'll take the ticket.
Nice.
And I'm taking Benny.
Cool.
Benny and I are going. Yeah, and we're going to go see with a good friend, my friend Peggy, and we're going to go, and
that's
kind
cool.
of psyched.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm going Friday, but.
You are? So you have tickets, yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll
Friday as well. Friday morning.
Friday morning. I'll start to give you some spoilers if you want to hear what happened.
I hate spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
I'm not. It's funny because my wife doesn't care at all, but I don't like spoilers. He's even
she doesn't care. My wife doesn't care about Star Wars.
She just doesn't care about spoilers, and I go, really?
Oh, really?
Wow.
That's so weird.
That's terrible.
I don't know why.
I have not put a lot of thought into this upcoming movie. Like, I kind of almost caught me off guard. Like, I forgot it was coming out.
Oh, it's here. Yeah.
And, and I got the opportunity to go. So we just watched the last one. It's on Netflix now. We just, I caught up. Yeah. But I'm like, I don't even know, what do I think is going to happen? I'm kind of excited.
kind of, I think it was the same way with episode 8, where it was kind of like, all right, I'm not really sure what's going to happen, so I kind of went into it with an open mind, but went through and watched from, basically replayed them all.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah.
That takes some time.
Except for one.
Ready.
Yeah.
One doesn't exist.
You should forget Phantom
One
Menace.
doesn't exist.
No.
One shall not be the.
I'm that
episode
way
shall
about
not be
2.
named.
Really?
That's how I feel about 2. I didn't like it.
Okay.
Actually, I take it back. If you edited it down to maybe like 55 minutes.
I'd like to take.
Well, there was somebody who did an edit of 1 and 2, and it made it 50 some minutes. Yeah.
There's
Did
pieces.
they take out all the scenes with Natalie Portman? Or those?
No,
all
it's just
removed?
there's pieces of 2 that it's like, okay, this is important to the overall story,
Yeah,
but a
right.
lot of it is like, okay.
You could do without it. A lot of
I
it's
could
just
do without a lot
not
of
really relevant.
Yeah, but
What's your favorite?
my all-time favorite. Wow, that's I mean, for a long time, I used to say Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
I think I need a little bit more context. I know I'm in the minority. I really enjoyed The Last Jedi, but we'll see what
As
happens
like a
this
favorite
weekend.
level. Wow.
Yeah, I think about the 2 of them, and part of it is just because of how much it challenged. For me, there was a lot of challenging of the entire series, and I kind of like that. And yeah, it's not a perfect movie. There are things that I think were like, maybe that wasn't necessary. But generally speaking, I was like, yeah, I liked it.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Empire is probably the top. I think probably still are we including Rogue One?
You can include Rogue One.
I
sure.
actually
Rogue
think
One is
Rogue
good.
One
I
is
thought
a
Rogue One was
really
awesome.
good movie.
Yeah.
Rogue One is good.
Rogue One is pretty high on. Like that was fun.
Yeah. And in the order of watching them, you could do
If you
theatrical
insert it.
release, right?
Yeah.
Really do. If you come back around and look at that kind of all this, that ending of the way when they added that scene at the end where Vader sees the ship flying off, that is like the perfect way to lead into 4. So I think 3 really needs to be there first.
The
or
way it connects
3D.
in is so interesting, and I didn't know that.
Right?
I didn't know that. And so I was surprised when that happened on screen. Like,
Mhm.
oh wow, they're literally backing right up into
Yeah,
the movie. I
they
did not.
Which is
expect
great.
that.
That's cool.
so no,
To
I
me,
like
number 4 is the best of all time, and I'm not getting into like acting and arguing about like is it the best, but it's the first. I'm old enough to say I was in the movie theater,
Yeah, when we saw
and
it.
I just remember that like as a moment. You know what I mean? As just a game changer. Like whoa, mind.
No, the one thing I always concede is that no movie ever looked like that.
No.
So that anyone who says like, well, look, it's the first one because we'd never seen anything like it before. Yeah, that's true. No one had ever seen anything like it before. So,
So I hope they just keep going with it.
with more movies and stuff.
I think as long as they keep making money on it, they'll keep making them.
we could have a whole Mandalorian episode.
I've never seen it because I
haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting. I want to like kind of get a bunch of them together.
Wanna binge it all?
Yeah. Do we know how many episodes? I know they
There's
just released
6 out.
7.
And somebody told me there's going to be 8. There's 6 are out. I haven't watched.
Okay.
I think
It's getting good.
somebody told me
good
that
reviews,
7
right?
was coming out today, but I don't know if that's true.
That's what I
But it's
heard.
good, right? Like I've heard that it is a good series.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I enjoy it. I don't. I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. It's not that I don't like it. Yeah. So chapter 7 did come out today. It's part of me. The jury's still out for me a little bit because I think I'm just curious. Like, where are you going with this?
Well,
So-
maybe there'll be some surprises.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Star Wars.
All right. So there's
we've
the Star
devolved
Wars
into-
epilogue.
You
so
know, we have
if
to
you-
sign off tonight's show, right?
This is the way.
Yeah, I
Oh
was
no,
gonna
is
say,
that
may
not
the
it?
Force be with you, or something like that.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
some people know what I'm talking about there. So yeah, that's right. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the Dev Talk Show tonight. We talked about Azure Functions, and it sounds like next time we might do SignalR, although we're not 100% sure when that is. Make sure you join us for Philly.net tomorrow night, December 19th, with Jeff Fritz to talk about full stack development. And if we're already way past that date, then make sure you head over to youtube.com/PhillyDotNet and check out those 2 hours with Jeff Fritz. He's fantastic. He's on the program team for ASP.NET, so you've got somebody working for Microsoft on this product, reaching out to the community, and he's an awesome development streamer to watch on Twitch. So you can just go to his twitch.tv/ and his handle C#Fritz. You just spell all that out. It's been a long time Twitter handle of his. He's famous for being C#Fritz. We tried to name the .NET bot after him, but he very wisely
was
didn't allow
close.
that to happen.
It was
But we sure
close,
tried. So in any case, hope you enjoy the Rise of Skywalker, and tell us about it in the comments, or tell us about what you liked about this episode, or what more you want to know about Azure Functions, and we can do it on a future show. Make sure you're hitting the like button if you liked it, hit the subscribe button if you want to know that a new YouTube video is going up or that we're on the air, or if you follow us on Mixer and Twitch, you'll get those notifications as well. So thank you to Rich behind the camera, who switches the screens for us and gets all this. You don't see the whole studio, and everything's plugged in and it all works, and he had to figure out between our two very similarly named machines
and similar screens. Yeah.
So thank you for that, Rich, and thanks, Andy, for working through Azure Functions with me. And we both approached this new, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty new.
We dealt with it a little bit, but we said let's really dig in, and we did it live. And so hope you enjoyed it. So for the two of them, I'm Chris Gomez, and we will see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.